The morning sunlight was pouring through the floor-to-ceiling windows of my corner office, turning the polished marble desk into a sheet of gold. I remember adjusting the cuff of my silk blouse, noticing a faint smudge of nude lipstick on my wrist. Typical. Even after everything life threw at me, I still paid attention to details like that. Maybe it was the last piece of the old me clinging on, quiet, meticulous, always trying to be perfect for someone who never deserved it. My phone buzzed twice. That vibration, the short, sharp kind, was the one I reserved for professional emergencies. I glanced at the screen, expecting a client, maybe a contract update. Instead, a name froze me. Jonathan Whitman. My ex-husband's divorce lawyer. The same man who stood across the mahogany table 3 years ago and slid a set of cold, neatly stapled papers toward me. The same man my husband used so he wouldn't have to face me directly. The same man who watched my hands tremble and said, "Mrs. Henderson, Daniel wants this resolved quickly." A breath caught in my throat. Not panic. Not pain. Just irony. Heavy, poetic irony. Because now Jonathan wasn't calling for my ex-husband. He was calling for me. As my reflection stared back from the glossy black screen, calm eyes, soft makeup, the quiet confidence I fought years to build, I felt the universe nudge something inside me. A knock came at my glass door. My assistant peeked in. "Ms. Henderson, Mr. Whitman is here. For his first day." I smiled slowly. A woman's smile. Controlled, elegant, victorious. "Send him in." I wasn't always this woman. The one with steady hands and an office high enough to see the tops of skyscrapers. 3 years ago, I was Ava Walker, a wife who believed love could fix anything. Back then, our apartment in Charlotte wasn't perfect, but I tried to fill every crack with hope. Daniel, my husband at the time, loved the idea of stability, but not the effort that came with it. He worked in real estate, always chasing deals that were about to change everything. I worked 2 part-time jobs, packing his lunches, washing his shirts, pretending everything was fine. I remember the night everything shifted. Daniel came home late, jacket wrinkled, tie loose, eyes cold in a way I'd never seen before. "Ava, we need to talk," he said, dropping his keys with a clatter that made my chest tighten. My hands instinctively rubbed against my jeans, trying to wipe off the dread forming on my skin. He didn't look at me when he spoke. "I think we should separate. My lawyer will reach out." I blinked hard, thinking I misheard. "Your lawyer?" "Daniel, we're married." "You're telling me this like a business transaction?" He walked to the kitchen, poured himself water, and shrugged. "It's easier this way. Cleaner." His indifference sliced deeper than any argument could. The next morning, I got the email from Jonathan Whitman, his lawyer. A polite, clinical message scheduling a meeting to expedite proceedings. I sat on our couch, knees tucked to my chest, holding a throw pillow like it could anchor me. My breath shook. My fingers trembled so badly, I could barely type a reply. When I finally met Jonathan in his firm's glass conference room, he placed the divorce papers in front of me without meeting my eyes. It wasn't cruelty, just detachment. But that detachment made me feel invisible. It was my grandmother, Eleanor King, who saw me breaking. I drove to her small white house on the edge of Raleigh that same evening. She opened the door, took one look at my blotchy face, and pulled me into her arms. "Oh, honey," she whispered, brushing my hair like she used to when I was little. "Sometimes life throws you out because you were never meant to stay in that room." She handed me something I still keep to this day. Her old leather-bound planner, worn edges, faint scent of lavender lotion. Inside, a note written in her delicate handwriting. "Build a life that can't be taken from you." Standing in her kitchen, warm light, lemon-scented air, the hum of the old refrigerator, I made a decision. If Daniel wanted a clean exit, he would get one. But I would rebuild myself where he could never reach me again. Starting over felt like standing in the middle of an empty highway at midnight, cold, silent, directionless. But there was also something strangely liberating about it. No expectations. No husband watching me with thinly veiled disappointment. No one to shrink myself for. Just me. And that worn leather planner my grandmother pressed into my hands. I moved into a tiny studio apartment in Durham, peeling paint, buzzing refrigerator, a view of a parking lot with one flickering street lamp. But the rent was cheap, and the silence was mine. I got a job as a receptionist for a small legal startup called Well and Price, mostly answering phones and sorting client files. It wasn't glamorous. My first week smelled like paper dust and burnt coffee, but it was stable. What I didn't expect was Margaret Price, one of the senior partners, to notice me. Margaret was in her late 50s, sharp and warm at the same time, with silver-streaked hair always pinned in a twist. She caught me one evening, long after everyone else left, sitting at my desk surrounded by color-coded files I'd reorganized because the system was messy. She leaned against the doorway and said, "You're wasted at the front desk." I nearly choked on my peppermint tea. Within weeks, she started training me, first on basic case research, then documentation prep, then real estate contract analysis. She was patient, demanding, and brutally honest. Exactly what I needed. The work wasn't easy. My nights were long. My confidence shaky at best. I remember one night sitting at my tiny dinette table, laptop open, legal books stacked around me like a fortress. My eyes burned, my coffee was cold, and my nail polish was chipped so badly it looked like a map. My chest tightened, fear whispering, "You're not smart enough. Not capable enough. Not strong enough." But then I'd touch the cover of my grandmother's planner and keep going. Slowly, things changed. My first win was small, catching a contract discrepancy that saved a client $60,000. Margaret stood behind me during the meeting, arms crossed proudly, like she'd always known I had it in me. My second win was bigger, negotiating a settlement draft so clean that one of our major clients requested me specifically. Then came the moment everything pivoted. A real estate investment firm, Harrison Ridge Holdings, needed legal coordination for a massive acquisition. Margaret pushed me forward. "Let her handle it," she said in a boardroom full of skeptical older men. I did. And I nailed it. By the end of the project, I wasn't just an assistant anymore. I was building a reputation, quietly, steadily. And I was good at it. So good that when Margaret decided to retire, she shocked everyone by recommending that the board bring me on as a partner. I didn't tell my family. I didn't tell Daniel. I didn't post anything flashy online. I just kept growing, kept climbing, kept building a life that couldn't be taken from me, exactly like Grandma Eleanor wrote. After a year, I launched my own firm, Henderson Legal Strategies. Another quiet beginning. A small office. A small team. But within 2 years, we were one of the fastest-growing boutique firms on the East Coast. I became a woman my past could never imagine. A woman my ex-husband would never recognize. A woman he would soon have no choice but to face. Success has a funny way of circling back to the doors that once shut in your face. It was a Thursday morning, humid, the kind where the air feels heavy even inside the office. I was reviewing a new corporate acquisition proposal when my assistant, Lila, nudged my door open. "Ms. Henderson," she said, hesitating, "your 10 a.m. is here. They're asking for you directly." I frowned. "I don't have a 10 a.m., she swallowed. "It's your ex-husband, ma'am. Daniel Walker. His mother, too. They said it's urgent." For a moment, I didn't move. Not a blink. Not a breath. Daniel, his mother, Grace Walker, was the woman who once told me, "Ava, you're sweet, but Daniel needs someone more driven." The irony nearly pulled a laugh out of my throat. Lila lowered her voice. "They're waiting in the conference room. Should I send them away?" I considered it. Really considered it. But something warm and steady settled in my chest, a voice that sounded suspiciously like Grandma Eleanor. "Face what tried to break you. Show it you survived." I stood, smoothed my blouse, and walked across the marble hallway toward the executive conference suite. When I opened the door, they both stood up instinctively. Daniel looked older, more tired. His hair was thinner, his jaw tense. Grace looked exactly the same, polished, pearl earrings, eyes full of judgment wrapped in fake politeness. "Ava," Daniel said, forcing a small smile. "Wow. You look different." I tilted my head slightly. I am different. Silence. Thick, uncomfortable. Finally, Daniel cleared his throat. We're in a difficult situation. I'm in the middle of a major lawsuit. My firm, it's collapsing. We need legal help. And someone told me. He gestured vaguely at the room, the glass walls, the skyline. That you own this place now. Grace jumped in, wringing her hands. And dear, we've always cared about you. Truly. We were hoping. I raised a hand. Please stop. Tell me what you need. Daniel exhaled shakily. My attorney dropped out this morning.
He paused.
I was hoping Henderson Legal might consider taking my case. You could have heard dust settling. I let the moment stretch, deliberately, before lowering myself into the leather chair at the head of the table, the seat that once belonged to men like him. Then I spoke, gently but clearly. I already know your attorney dropped out. Their eyes snapped up. Grace blinked.
How?
I leaned back, crossing my legs, calm as a resting tide. Because, I said softly, he works for me now. Their faces went pale, synchronized shock. Daniel's lips parted in disbelief. Jonathan? Jonathan Whitman works for you. I nodded slowly. Just then, as if the universe wanted to underline the moment, a knock sounded on the door. It opened, and Jonathan stepped inside, press suit, neat files in hand, the same calm composure he had the day he delivered my divorce papers. Except now, when he looked at me, there was respect. Professional.
Solid.
Ms. Henderson, he said, giving me a polite nod. Contracts are ready whenever you want them. Then he turned to Daniel and Grace. Good morning. Daniel stared at him as if gravity had tilted sideways. Jonathan excused himself, and the door clicked shut. The silence he left behind felt like a revelation. Daniel wiped a palm over his face. I can't believe this. Grace's voice cracked. Ava, sweetheart, how did you manage all this? I let a quiet smile curve onto my lips. You underestimated me, I said. Both of you did. But that's okay. I needed to be underestimated to become who I am. They stared around the room now, really looked at it. The awards. The framed contracts. The polished shelves lined with cases I'd won. The gold nameplate on the door. Ava Henderson, managing partner. They saw all of it. And finally they saw me. Daniel sank into the nearest chair, as if his knees could no longer hold him. Grace stood stiff beside him, gripping her handbag like it was the last rope above a cliff. I remained standing, not out of arrogance, but because sitting felt too gentle for the moment. Ava, Daniel said, voice low, almost breaking. Please. I need your help. Once, those words would have shattered me. Now, they simply floated in the air, powerless. I walked to the window, letting my fingers skim the smooth edge of the glass. The city below buzzed with life, cars, distant sirens, people moving with purpose. I had once felt lost in that world. Now I was rooted in it. You're asking a lot, I said quietly. Grace rushed forward. He's learned his lesson, Ava. Truly. He's not the same man. I turned, my voice firm. Grace, this isn't about punishment. This is about consequences. Daniel's shoulders slumped. I deserve that. The honesty in his voice surprised me. But I didn't bend. Growth didn't erase memories. I stepped closer and sat across from them. If Henderson Legal takes your case, I said, folding my hands, there will be conditions. Grace tensed. Conditions? Yes. My tone didn't waver. I don't offer lifelines without accountability. Daniel nodded slowly, bracing himself. Tell me. I took a breath. Condition 1, you attend financial responsibility counseling. Real counseling. Weekly. His eyes widened, but he nodded again. I will. Condition 2, you stop gambling with your investments. No more big risks. You follow the legal and strategic plan my team sets strictly. Daniel swallowed, shame flickering across his eyes. That's fair. Grace clasped her hands tightly. What about me? I met her gaze. Condition 3, you stop belittling people when they don't meet your expectations. Including your son. Including me. You treat everyone you interact with professionally or personally with basic respect. Grace's lips parted. For the first time since I'd known her, she looked human, unmasked, vulnerable. I didn't realize. Her voice trembled. I didn't know I hurt you so much, Ava. You didn't have to know, I said gently. But now you do. Silence settled again, this time softer. I continued. Condition 4. Full transparency. Every document, every account, every step in this legal process, you disclose everything. No secrets. No shortcuts. Daniel nodded once more. Understood. And finally, I said, leaning forward, my voice steady, you both acknowledge the past, not to dwell on it, but so we never repeat it. Grace's eyes filled with tears. Daniel's jaw tightened before he whispered, Ava, I am sorry. For all of it. The apology landed somewhere deep, not to repair what was broken, but to close a chapter that had stayed open too long. I stood, smoothing the wrinkles from my skirt. If you agree to all of these conditions, I said, Jonathan will finalize the intake paperwork, and Henderson Legal will represent you. Professionally, competently, without bias. Daniel stood slowly. I agree. Grace whispered, I agree too. I nodded once. No dramatic forgiveness. No sweeping emotional reunion. Just boundaries, clear, firm, earned. The power wasn't in controlling them. The power was in choosing myself first. And for the first time, they understood that. The following weeks unfolded with a strange, almost fragile quietness. Daniel showed up to every counseling appointment. He forwarded every financial document my team requested. He didn't argue, didn't deflect, didn't pretend to know more than he did. For the first time in all the years I'd known him, he listened. Grace, too, changed in her own slow, awkward way. She still wore her pearls, still straightened her posture like a judge in a courtroom, but her tone softened. Once during a meeting, she paused before speaking, took a breath, and said, Ava, if I'm overstepping, please tell me. 6 small words, but they felt like watching ice thaw. My team worked on Daniel's case like they would for any client, professionally, diligently. Jonathan kept his tone crisp and neutral, but every now and then, when we crossed paths in the hallway, he'd give me a small nod. A quiet acknowledgement of the strange full-circle life had created between us. As for me, I found myself reflecting more than reacting. One evening, after everyone left the office, I stayed behind. The city lights glowed like constellations spread across the ground. I opened the bottom drawer of my desk and pulled out Grandma Eleanor's leather-bound planner. Its edges were even more worn now, the lavender scent almost faded. I traced my fingers over her neat handwriting on the first page. Build a life that can't be taken from you. I thought about that younger version of myself, the Ava who cried into a pillow because her husband ended their marriage through a lawyer, the Ava who feared she'd disappear into someone else's life and never be seen. She didn't know she'd end up here, leading a thriving law firm, guiding others, reclaiming her identity piece by piece. She didn't know her ex-husband's lawyer would one day work for her. She didn't know the people who underestimated her would walk into her office humbled, seeking help. She didn't know she would rise, quietly, steadily, beautifully. But my grandmother knew. I closed the planner with a soft thud, feeling a warm tightness spread through my chest, grief, gratitude, strength all tangled together. Healing hadn't been loud. It hadn't been a victory parade. It was the slow rebuilding of a woman who finally chose herself. The last step came unexpectedly. The day we finalized Daniel's legal strategy, he paused before leaving my office. Ava, he said softly, I hope someday you meet someone who deserves the woman you became. I didn't respond. I didn't need to. Because for the first time in my life, I wasn't waiting to be chosen. I had already chosen myself. I watched him go, closed the door, and stood alone in my office, the skyline shining around me, the world steady and wide open. Then, in a voice barely above a whisper, I said the words that felt like the true ending to everything. My life isn't something anyone can take from me ever again.